ladies and gentlemen, Corey Boswell here, person that runs the social media football page on Facebook and Twitter, known as Football Kentucky DBA. Today's guest is Drew Deener of 93.9 Louisville ESPN. How you doing today, Drew?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing good, man. So how did you come about getting into radio, and what was that journey like for you?
It's funny. I tell people all the time, my job didn't exist when I was in college. I guess ESPN radio started when I was about a sophomore at Transy there, and there weren't talk shows. There was one guy in Lexington that had a show on WLAP, Scott Masteller, and he had that maybe my senior year, and I was like, well, this is pretty cool. What's this? It's sports radio. I'd done TV. I went and worked at a TV station in Hazard, and then I don't know, about 2-3 years later, Alan Cutler asked me to fill in for him on a radio show, a sports talk show. And I was like, well, what's that? He's like, you talking about sports for 3 hours. And I said, well, I can do that for sure. That's a job. So, and then got a full-time gig there. And I was probably about, I'd say 25, 26 years old. So that'd have been 96, 97, something like that. So, yeah, I mean, my job really didn't even barely existed when I was coming out of school.
Now, once you got that, where you're at now with it, was that your main goal, or your end result, or did you just like, I'm just going to go along for the ride and whatever happens?
Yeah, I wanted to work in sports, and the only jobs were in local television, really. And then, I got into radio doing the show there in Lexington from 4 to 7 with Crisscross. And I really learned a lot from him on the air, but I was learning a lot the whole time because he was the sales manager and he always wanted me to sell for him, but I just didn't think I was much of a salesperson, but I just kind of watched and observed what he did and didn't really think anything of it. And then years later, I got into doing some of the sales. I realized I was learning a whole lot by osmosis, basically. But no, like you couldn't shoot for, I would never thought I could have ended up here. Because again, it didn't even really exist growing up, but I've made some good relationships, caught some breaks along the way. But yeah, for sure. It's great where I am now, but I could never have roadmapped it. That's for sure.
Now, how did the idea first come about of 93.9 being exclusive for all Louisville sports, and how long did getting that deal done actually take? Because a lot of people still don't know that.
Yeah, it was, boy, it's a long story. But UofL kind of came to us, oh gosh, after I'd been at the station about a year, and said, hey, we'd really like to get a UofL themed station. Even they had one, they weren't thrilled, I guess you could say, stations. They came to us with their current partner at that time. And we just, it's pretty unusual to do this, to have two sports channels and one of them be themed toward one team or whatever. But, right away we got the baseball contract, and we're laying the groundwork on a daily basis with all of our shows to at least be in the hunt whenever the radio rights were going to come up, which they did, we got them a couple. This is our second year of being the official broadcast partner. But that was probably about a year after I left 790 to come to work for ESPN Louisville.
Now, I remember listening to it actually on that day on the radio. I'm just curious, how much and how many mimosas did you and Mark Blakenbaker have that day in celebration?
Well, I don't know how many he had. It was a great partnership with another radio group. I mean, Dugan Ryan, Troy Miles, Tom Fallbush. Like you don't have different radio groups come together to form a partnership who are also, the stations are independently owned. Most stations are owned by big corporations. And so, we had, we knew it needed you had to have two strong radio stations to get the rights. There's just too much programming if you're going to carry women's basketball, coaches shows, baseball. And we wanted to give them, that was going to be our big push to give, if there's no other game that night, then the women's game's going on both channels, or the baseball game, or whatever the case may be. And so that was a big part of our push, in our proposal. But really it was, that was a day that it was the guys that were all in on our text chain, that were the key members of it, that put together a new radio statewide network. Well, added some others, kept some others, and put the bid together because it was definitely a group effort of two stations that are not even close to being owned by the same people.
Right. Now let's talk about the time slot you and Mark share on the show. Y'all have 7 to 10, correct?
Yep, that's it. Yep, so every morning.
So a lot of people don't realize. People think that, part of my French, but it's proverbially easy as shit. It's really not as easy as people think. Time and effort in crafting and perfecting what you do for a living makes it look easy to the naked eye. But for the novice people out there, tell them just how really not easy it actually is. People don't understand how much pressure you have truly on yourself on a daily basis to have enough content for 3 hours of airplay.
I mean, it is and it isn't. I don't want to overstate it, but I don't want to understate it. I mean, I think everybody's got a week of radio in them, right? I think anybody who's never had a talk show has probably got
Yeah.
opinions. They wanted to get out there. They could do radio for a week, and anybody could do radio in March. I mean, anybody could. But it does get to a point. It's more of the building process. The long hours. I mean, when I would get up at 5 a.m., those days, send that guy a voicemail. That was when I first started having to get up. I had to work a lot harder earlier on just to develop the contacts that I have now. I mean, to try to get a Pat 40 on maybe early in my career, I'd have to email, follow up. Now I just text Pat, Tuesday night. Hey, you good tomorrow? 9:05, boom, done. Whereas that would have been, who knows how, long of a job to try to get a phone number, do all that. So on some levels it is, and on some levels it isn't. Because I don't want to, I mean, now the alarm's more like 5:45, and probably everybody's up by then who has any sort of normal job with kids my age.
Definitely. So what's your thoughts on the job that Jeff Brom has been able to accomplish in just his first year? Now, before you give your answer, I want to add just a little bit more context to that. A lot of people say anybody can, given their schedule, but at the end of the day, you still got to play the damn game. Like it's not as easy as people think.
I mean, the over/under was what, 8.5, something like that.
I mean,
so. Vegas is generally good at that. I predicted 11-1 to start the year. I'm on the record of saying that because I mean, anybody could say 10. I mean, I really kind of thought we might be near 10-2, but anybody can say 10-2. So I went on the record with 11-1. So I'm not that surprised because I saw what he did at Purdue and I saw how bad they were when he was when it got there. Like it was when you look at the records. All you got to do is go back and check. They'd won 3 conference games in 4 years combined, and he won 4 his first year. I really thought this is where they'd be because there were people that were much closer to the program telling me that'd been close to both programs say this is more talented than any team he had at Purdue. People were saying that this summer. So I thought he'd do great. 11-1 was probably adding one. Who knows? They may end up 10-2. I don't know, but I got a chance. I guess I'm live with that. But yeah, I mean, I really started hearing over the summer. Look, there's a lot of depth on the defense. There's a lot of names that people may not recognize that are good players that are on the roster. So I know this is what he's always wanted to do. So, I think this is honestly about what I thought he'd do because I had such, respect for him and the job that I know he does coaching football.
Speaking of Purdue, you just brought that up by giving your answer to the question. A lot of people diminish what he accomplished at Purdue. And I guess those that diminish are novice sports fans or novice to the idea of how much work a head coach actually has to put into doing something like building a program. Like, take away the record prior to him being there, other than Drew Brees, name a successful football season. You can't.
No. And look at him now. I mean, what do they got? 3 wins this year, something like that. And yeah, the dumbest stat that ever got quoted is like, well, he's only 2 games over 500 at Purdue. It's like saying being 2 games over 500 at Vandy is the same as being 2 games over 500 at Auburn. Like, it's not; those aren't equitable. Like, they don't. If you go 2 games over 500 at Vandy, you've made history. And really, again, look at the record prior. Look at the record so far after. That's all I would say.
Now, let's stay on Jeff Brom before we get into a couple more other topics. Given the landscape of today's game, there's going to be a lot of people coming and clamoring for Jeff Brom, given Texas A&M, and then given the ultimate coaching carousel that's going to happen after this year's concluded. How much and how hard do you think the effort is for Louisville and Josh Hurd and the athletic department to maintain Jeff? I'm not saying Jeff's going to leave. I'm not trying to put that in the air, but that's something you honestly have to consider. given his success his first year.
He ain't going anywhere. I'll tell you that.
Right,
He's going
right,
to get
right, right.
paid here. And he's already, but well, when he gets to, if he gets to 10 wins, he gets a 2-year extension on his contract. He's already earned one on it. And I don't know if anybody's even Freedom of Information acted that, but I know that for a fact that he gets to 10, he gets 2 more added on. Yeah, he's going to be, making more money for sure. But this is where he wants to be. I think it's where he's always wanted to be. And he's not a guy you're going to be able to just impress with money, because that's just not, I mean, it's just not who he is. So, I think I know this is where he wants to be.
Case in point, a man not impressed with money. I don't know if it was your show or Maven's show one day last week. Somebody was talking about how somebody had a chance to have lunch with Jeff Brom, and they were
It was
excited.
Maven's show. Yeah, it was Rummage.
And then Jeff's like, Jeff said, "How's Arby's sound?"
And he had a cup too, right? He had like a refill cup or something there. I think something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
that's him.
How important do you think is it for a university and a fan base like Louisville to have a man like Jeff Brom? Not because he's from here, but because he obviously money doesn't impress him as it does most coaches.
Yeah, I mean, this is where in the era where you're going to have revenue gaps between schools, you got to get somebody who cares more. And I don't think you could ever pay somebody to care as much as Jeff cares about this. And I mean, you could get whoever you want. Nick Saban, you may say maybe a better football coach. He'll never care about Louisville football the way Jeff Brom cares about Louisville football. So to me, that's the difference, and that's why he's the perfect guy for the job here. And I think it's going to be a long run.
Definitely. Now, I want to switch gears here and get into basketball. Now, by all means, I want you to tell me if I'm wrong with saying this, and I have no problem being wrong. I've been married for 10 years. I'm wrong a lot. Do you feel Kenny Payne and Jeff Brom were both emotional hires to a degree?
Well, I think Jeff was an easy one. I mean, Jeff wanted the job. He wanted the job for a couple of years. That deal got done. It would have gotten done sooner if his agent wasn't out in L.A. With his other client with the Rams. It might have gotten done a day earlier. So that one wasn't that was easy and that was practical. I'm not as involved with was involved with the Kenny Payne, but it seemed like it was preordained that they were going to get him because he seemed to have pedigree, and sometimes and maybe that pedigree translates more in football because you're, I don't know, in charge of one half of the team than it does in basketball. Yeah. I don't know. But right, I mean, it seemed like it was preordained for a while that was going to be him, but nobody really, I mean, I shouldn't say nobody. It was a very small amount of people who had much of a quarrel with it.
Now,
at the time.
Yeah. Now, me personally, I never heard about Kenny Payne being talked about getting the job until Denny Crum spoke the words in favor of Kenny Payne that he did. Do you think he still would have been hired had Coach Crum, the legend, not have spoken those words?
I'm not sure when that happened. I just know I don't think that had much influence. I mean, I don't remember that being influence on. I just remember every big booster and every person connected, that knows anybody was like, it's got to be Kenny Payne. Like it just seemed like it was preordained that they'd made up their mind. And I know people that went to New York and had met with him, that were acting on behalf of the university, and it was that he was really. It seemed like a one-man search.
Now, it's obvious that this season so far is starting off kind of how last season did. If it continues on the same trajectory, at what point in the season do you feel that they may potentially cut ties, or do they suffer through another, let's say, 4-win, 10-win season and then let them go?
I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, again, we're a couple of games in, but I mean, what you do have is an athletic director who has proven if something's not going well and he doesn't think it's going to continue, has made a move mid-season. He did that with Chris Mack. So I'm not saying that is, necessarily where we're headed, although it's too many games like the other night. You certainly wouldn't be a surprise to see it. But I think you got an athletic director who will know when, if it is the time. I don't think it's now, but I think you got somebody in charge who has done it before.
Right. Now, speaking of Josh has done a great job since he's been there. He's got to feel the pressure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're an athletic director. You're always feeling pressure. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's there. I mean, there's economic pressure for the city, frankly, to be. I was down there at the game, the UMBC game, and went down, and there's 3 bartenders down in one of the, downstairs bars, and there was no customers. Like he trickles down even to that. So aside from the fact all the empty seats that are there, that even if they're paid for, you still need people to come down and pay for parking and concessions and restaurants. And yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely economic pressure. It's a simple to feel.
Definitely, definitely. What's your thoughts on the officiating from that Duke and North Carolina game this past weekend?
I'd love to say I was be able to stay awake to see it, but I'd been with a friend of mine who just buzzed in there from Clemson, and I was at that game. You know, when you go to a game there, it's like going to a game at Georgia or any small town. You're staying 2 3 hours after. So by the time we got home and I'd made it to the fourth quarter, I considered it a win. So I really haven't. All I saw was the guard that was halfway down the end zone, but I didn't. I can't say I saw much past that. So I didn't see all the things that everybody was howling about the next morning.
My thing about it is it's 2023 and here may be 2024. We're still dealing with issues with officials that we did umpteen years ago. Like for me or for a Louisville fan out there, like that's got to make you kind of uneasy heading into the important game that Saturday is against Miami.
I don't know. I mean, the end of the Louisville game, Storm Duck ripped the guy's head off or arm off, and they didn't call pass interference on the fourth down play. So I'm not. I don't think this is the week to complain about ACC officials if you're Louisville, because that way that game ended on Thursday. That was a good whistle. So I wasn't gonna try to go to bat too much for anything that happened in that game, since hey, Louisville got out with a maybe a call at the end.
Speaking of football, other than the obvious people that have stood out the most, like Gelati and emergence of Garendo, Devin Neal, who is somebody on the team in your eyes that has made a lot of noise but hasn't really gotten any recognition?
Gosh, I was going to say Garendo until you said it there. I'm still waiting for Kevin Coleman to break out. I think he's going to
Yeah,
be a really, really good player, and that's what I'm looking for. And then, everybody's complaining about Jack Plummer's 9-1, and has led a couple of second half comebacks. And while everybody is oh, this guy, that guy. I mean, I think one thing that it shows you, Jeff Brom has had total faith in him, and it's paid off. So while he's not been perfect, he has led a couple of second half comebacks, actually three, NC State, when they were down double digits at halftime, to be 9-1. So I think it's one of those where he's not going to go down as Teddy Bridgewater, but he's 9-1 in the ACC, and they got a chance to play in the ACC championship game.
right. That's one thing what people forget about out there is being a quarterback. Majority part of your job is to manage, be a manager. You're the head coach on that field, and like you said, he's 9-1. If
Yeah,
if that's bad, you need to pick another team or another
yeah,
sport to watch.
yeah. I mean, I just think he could have been better in the. He can't turn the ball over like he did in the Pittsburgh game. I mean, if he not do that, the rest of the team is good enough that they don't ask him to be perfect.
Right, right. So I'm going to ask a couple of life questions before we end
All
this
right.
good conversation. What was it like having your child, man, your son, and what's it like being a parent in your eyes? I always ask personal questions like that. I always like
Yeah.
getting a different perspective.
Well, it's funny. The audience has grown up with my son. Like when I was
Because
first
he's
starting,
16 now, right?
be 16 next month,
Yeah.
and I've been doing radio about 15 years, I think. So the audience has grown up and they've heard me talking about being the dad of a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, a teenager. And it really hit him at Derby a few years ago when he went to his first one with me, that all these people were like, "Hey Max, what's up?" And he was like, "How do these people know me?" I'm like, "Well, I talk about you on the show."
Right.
Um, and so yeah, that's been kind of the cool part for so many people to know so much about him, and to um, just again, that Derby was just like the line in the sand where it's just funny. How do these people know me? And but he couldn't give two hoots about most sports. He loves UFC. It's about it. He likes going to the football games now a little bit, but I don't know that he could name more than two players out there because it's not his thing. He'd rather be playing with his friends or watching some UFC short on Instagram or YouTube or whatever.
And staying on your son, how much is your son, you know, being here and stuff like that? How much of a factor for your success has he been? Because once you have something to live for other than yourself, that's a huge driving factor.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, But I've only got one. I've only got the one. So the people that have two and three and four and are putting them through private schools, I'm like, man, I don't know. What do you guys have, a gold mine in your backyard? But yeah, it's always motivating, and to try and and to try to not be have him, I don't know, to just not yeah, to ever him to worry about anything, for him. And that's just kind of, so he never has. So that's that, I think that's one of the biggest motivating things for me is that he doesn't feel any guilt, any pressure, this is just life, and he can just, be who he wants to be. So, I think that's probably the most motivating part, to be able to have him grow up however he wants to grow up.
What's the hardest thing you've ever had to overcome in your life?
Man, pretty easy, man. you know, um, you know, I lucked out in college. My fraternity brother's dad was the general manager of the TV station. There's 13 guys in my pledge class. One of them's dad's the general manager of the TV station. It got me my first 5 jobs. I think there was a little uncertainty. I left Lexington when we had have a job. At that point, I just felt like I would find one. And luckily, Duke and Ryan actually called me and said, "Hey, you want to fill in on an afternoon show?" And then a couple months later, there was an opening, and me and John L. Smith did a show together. So, that's. I'd love to tell you there was some great moment of adversity, but I count my blessings that I've had pretty good go of it. I'm just fortunate enough to meet the right person at the right time, who owns our radio station, Chad Boger in Kansas City, who gave me the opportunity to run a station, run my own show, freedom to go out and put a proposal in to get the UofL rights on a radio station that is not a 50,000 watt station, has not been around forever. So my dad calls it dumb Deener luck. I guess that's it. I don't know.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. He's always called it that, and my son's starting to pick up on that now. And something, crazy, lucky, good happens to him, he just goes DDL, dumb Deener luck.
Who in your eyes, since you've worked in and around U of L athletics and sports, who in your eyes, coaching wise, has been one of the most undeserving to be a head coach for Louisville?
Oh gosh.
I
Talking about
guess
football, basketball? Yeah. I
between
don't
those
know. I
two, we'll
mean,
limit it to them two sports.
I don't know. I still think they've all been deserving. I feel like, Kenny Payne had worked enough years as an assistant, had been at the right places, been in the NBA. And Chris Mack had worked enough places, certainly Rick Pitino. Charlie Strong had been an assistant forever. I wasn't really around. I mean, Cragthorpe seemed to be somebody everybody, I think everybody that gets hired, I don't think it's by accident. It just doesn't, because past performances aren't always indicative of future results. If they were, hiring would be easy. But, it's just one that it seems to me it should have had the pedigree, should have worked. But I mean, right now it's not on the basketball side. I mean, obviously this is the least successful of any of the coaches that have ever been hired in those sports. But yeah, I don't know. I wish there was a magic formula for it.
Definitely, definitely. If you could give one piece of advice out there to anybody about life, what would it be and why?
Well, I would give this advice to the younger generation, my son's generation as well. And everybody always, bemoans, oh, this generation is this or that. And this next generation coming out of college is not lazy at all. They're not lazy. You give them something to do, by God, they do it. But there's zero opportunistic nature in the young kids I talk to, the college kids. It's like, and I've even had this with my son. Like, hey, you want to do something in this line of work? Hey, I know someone there. We'll get their number. Like there's I think that is just stealing every single opportunity you can to get ahead, and not just, hey, everybody, here's the roadmap, here's the classes you take. But hey, if Jimmy's cousin is a general manager at a TV station or something like that, get in touch with him, ask for the number, follow up, because I think it takes so little to stand out. And I've told my son this of that generation, because again, I don't see any laziness at all, but I see zero opportunistic nature in that. And so I would say, if you see a door even cracked open, kick the door down. I mean, there's no roadmap from Trans. He doesn't even have a broadcast degree to get to end up in radio and TV for a career, which is what I've done. But anytime it was like, do we have a radio station here on campus? Ah, yeah. So does anybody call the games? Oh, no. So I went over to the PR office and said, can I go to Radio Shack, back when that was around, and get a couple of headsets? Yeah, sure. Here, take the credit card. But nobody was going to go say, hey, is anybody out there who wants to do the radio for
Yeah.
Transy? So that's what we'll see. Just be opportunistic, just when and pretend that it's a race and everything you want to get for a job, because you gotta be aggressive and hungry. And I don't think you're going against too many people that aren't aggressive and hungry. Again, talking to that with a younger generation, I fight this battle with my son. That's not fight a battle is overstating it, but hey, I'm interested in that. Okay, or it's like Dan McDonald says, are you interested or are you committed? Because if you're committed, you're going to go, talk to two or three people who can get you, whatever it is you want to do. And I don't think most people do that these days.